So these are the typical components of a lesson plan, and you may find different wording like check for understanding instead of assessment, or you might find them in a different order, but these are the basics and what we'll discuss today. We have goal, objectives, standards, material, introduction, lesson development, differentiation, assessment, and closing. A lesson plan goal guides the direction of the lesson and usually comes from the state or program standards. Goals help provide structure for planning your lesson. It lets the students know where the lesson is going, and it keeps parents informed about what you're teaching. So to create a lesson goal, ask yourself, what do I want my students to know at the end of the lesson? And I suggest starting your goal with this phrase. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to, and then a verb such as arrange, identify, define, list, etc. So for example, by the end of this lesson, students will be able to find words that begin with B. Or by the end of this lesson, students will be able to write the letter A. So an important factor is that the goal needs to be something that can be accomplished in one lesson. So here's an example of a goal that is too broad. It can't be taught in just one lesson. By the end of this lesson, students will make words using word families. That's too broad because which families are you talking about? All of the word families? That's way too much information for one lesson. So a better, more specific goal would be, by the end of this lesson, students will be able to make words using the ALL word family. Here's another example of a goal that's too broad, and it's one that I see a lot, so this is why I included it. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to name all the letters in the alphabet. So let's think about that for a minute. Pretend that you're learning Chinese. So picture some sort of Chinese alphabet in your mind. Would you be able to name 26 of those letters after one short lesson? The answer is no. So why do we set a goal of our children learning 26 letters in one lesson? A more specific goal would be, by the end of this lesson, students will be able to identify the letter D. Let's go to objective. The difference between the goal and objective is summed up easily when you think of this. The goal is what you want your students to know, and the objective is what they do to show you that they know it. So the objective in a lesson plan states the purpose of the lesson, what a student will be able to do once he or she has completed that lesson. An objective should be specific, clear, observable, and measurable. Again, objectives focus on student behaviors, not what the teacher's doing. An objective answers the question, what do I want my students to be able to do after this lesson? Objectives ensure that learning is focused so that both students and teachers know what's expected of them. They also provide criteria for evaluating student achievement, showing you who has mastered the content and who might need reteaching. There are two ways that we recommend writing a clear and measurable objective. The first one is shown on this slide. So it says, the students will be able to blank by blank with blank % accuracy. So for example, the students will be able to identify the letter D by pointing to 10 D magnet letters from an assortment of letters with 80% accuracy. That sort of objective is clear enough that the teacher, the director, or a sub can see who has mastered that lesson. The child who looks at an assortment of letters and points to the D's with 80% accuracy, or 8 out of 10 times, he has mastered the lesson. The student who cannot pick 8 out of 10 D's should be retaught because he has not mastered this particular lesson. So 2 more thoughts on that accuracy portion. Don't expect the students to be perfect with 100% accuracy. Kids have off days, off moments, just like we do. And in the same way, don't say that 1 out of 2 attempts is mastery, because that's only a 50% success rate, which does not really demonstrate mastery. Another common error we see on mastery is listing that 80% of the class will learn the material. The mastery in the objective is meant for each student. It's not an indicator of whole class achievement. So the next slide, this is another way you can write the objectives, and this is my favorite way. It's called the ABCD method. The A is audience, so who are you writing the objective for? B is behavior, what should your students be able to do? C is conditions, how will the student achieve the behavior? And degree, how well must it be done? So the audience is the students. What are they doing? Will be able to recall the beginning, middle, and end of a story. How are they doing that? Using a story map. And what degree? With no more than one detail in the wrong location.
Okay, so once we have our goal and our objective, then the next piece of our lesson plan is the standards. And a lot of times when we are planning lessons, we will look at our standards and determine our standard before we're planning our objective. You can also first come up with an objective and then look for a standard that aligns. There's really 2 different ways you can approach lesson planning when it comes to standards. It depends if you are using an approach, which is a lot of times referred to as that intentional approach to lesson planning, where you first have a standard and then you design your lesson for that standard, or if you're using what's oftentimes referred to as more of the naturalistic approach to lesson planning, which is you have a goal or an objective that you're looking to meet and then you match your standard to it. But when we look at standards, and each state has their own set of early learning standards, when we look at early learning standards, there's key areas that we want to look at to help us identify what is the specific skill that we are working on that's aligned to our standards. Each state, again, like I said, has different ones, has their own standards, but they all have some common similarities. So this particular example on the screen is from the Kansas Early Learning Standards. And as you can see from the farthest purple arrow on the left, this is pointing to the standard section title. This lets us know what section or what category of standards we're currently looking at. So if you see the part in the top highlighted in green, this piece of our standard is the communications and literacy standards. And if you notice over at the end, it has in parentheses CL. And that's important to point out because we're gonna talk about that in just a minute. Underneath your overall standard section title, you're going to have different domains. In Kansas, they align their domains by different age ranges. So they start with young infants, then go to mobile infants, toddlers. The one you can't see is 3-year-olds, and then the last column is pre-4, or your 4-year-old preschool. Once you're within your domain, then you can look down to identify your specific standards. Each standard has a standard number, and this is where that CL comes into play that I just talked about up in the green at the top. If you look at the beginning of the standard that's highlighted in red, it says CL. That's your code to know that this standard is connected to communication and literacy. When you move over next to it, then you have that L, because we are also looking at literature standards. If you look on the far left side of the image, there's the word literature is written going up and down. It says CLL. So it lets us know that we're looking at communications and literacy standards, in particular, the literature section. Then there's a T. The T aligns to the domain. That lets us know that this standard is the toddler domain. And then the number 1 lets us know it's the first piece of the standard for toddlers. The piece that's highlighted in yellow is what we refer to as our performance indicator. Some states refer to it as their standard statement, but this is where you find your sentence that tells you exactly what skill kiddos are going to be working on. So in this particular example, it's with prompting and support, asks and answers simple questions about story content using pictures. In other words, it's the specific literature skill that you're working on. So that's how we read standards. Again, they might be set up a little bit differently, but they all have these elements. They all have a standard section title. They all have domains. They all have a standard number, which is like the code for which standard section and domain you're talking about. And then they all have the sentence, which again, it can be called a performance indicator, or some states call it a standard statement. when we're looking at standards, when we're putting them in our lesson plan, it's really important to make sure that our standard connects directly to our goal and objective. And that when we write our standard in our lesson plan, that we include our standard section, domain, and or standard number, and the performance indicator. We want to include the whole thing. So if I was using the example that is shared in the image on the screen, in my lesson plan, I would write CL.L.T.1, prompting and support, asks and answers simple questions about story content using pictures. After you complete your standard, we have what I think a lot of people would say is probably the simplest section in your lesson plan, and that's the materials. The materials is a list of everything you need to teach the lesson. And what's really important to keep in mind here, when you are putting the materials in your lesson plan, you want to think about what do you need as the teacher to teach the lesson, and what do your students need to be able to successfully complete the lesson. And the reason it's so important to ensure that you have both is that the lesson plan is a guide for you as you're teaching, but a lot of times, let's say we're going to be absent and we have a substitute and we're going to leave our lesson plans for them. They need to have all the materials as well and be prepared. So while it's a simple section to fill out, it's important to make sure that we list everything the teacher needs and everything the student needs. After the materials comes the introduction section of the lesson plan. Sometimes this section of the lesson plan is referred to as the anticipatory set, but it's really the place where you are going to get your kiddos excited about what you're going to do in your lesson, right? You want to draw them in. You want to hook them. You want them to be like, oh, tell me more. I want to keep going. I want to keep learning, right? You want to connect your lesson introduction to your objective. You really want to use this part of the lesson plan to build your students' interest and to get them excited. It's a great place to activate your students' prior knowledge or introduce any type of key vocabulary words that are connected to the lesson. And so you can see there's an example here at the bottom. This was connected to kind of the examples that are being shared throughout of planning a lesson to the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. And your example might be, we've been learning about different parts of our body. I have this really great song we're going to sing today to help us. Who wants to sing with me? And then the kids would get really excited. So it's a place to set the tone for your lesson, get the kiddos excited, and really draw them in so that they want to see what's coming next.
The lesson development is also known as lesson procedures. It's the heart of the lesson plan. So this is where you describe step by step how you're going to teach the goal. This needs to be in enough detail that someone else can deliver the lesson if needed. So to explain lesson development to my students, I sometimes compare this part to a family trip because we said that a lesson plan is a map of a lesson. It's an itinerary of what you're doing. So pretend that you've planned a great trip to San Diego with your 4 kids. At the last minute, you get the flu, and your sister volunteers to take the kids on the trip. You need to provide her with just the right amount of detail for the vacation. You can't tell her simply, drive to San Diego and find the beach. That's not enough information. Neither can you tell her, get in the car, have everyone fasten their seatbelts, check your mirrors, put the key in the ignition. That's way too much detail. But you do need to provide her with the whole itinerary. The name, address, and reservation numbers for the hotels, the name and location of the beach, the SeaWorld tickets, etc. She needs the complete and total schedule. So in the same way, you need to be specific in creating this lesson plan section. If you happen to be out sick, there should be enough detail that a guest teacher could deliver this lesson. Each part of the lesson should point toward the goals. Now let's go to differentiation. This is where you modify parts of the lesson plan for individual needs of your students. This doesn't mean creating a whole second lesson plan. It just refers to changing or providing alternative options for how you would present that lesson. So in the example I just gave of the family vacation to San Diego, you need to modify portions for the family. Perhaps your oldest child gets car sick and he needs motion sick medicine, crackers and ginger ale, and a disposable bag in case he gets sick. Add these items to the materials section and put it in differentiation section. If your sister has to cover for you, these are crucial details, right? Your second child is deathly afraid of the dark, so he needs a nightlight for the hotel. The third child doesn't like being in the car, and the only thing that pacifies her are Disney movies. So you want to bring a device that loops her favorite movies. You might also include headphones for the rest of the car, so they don't have to listen to those Disney movies the whole time. The youngest child is a toddler. He needs pacifiers. He wanders off, so he needs an older child to look after him. So just thinking of the different students in your classroom and what they will need. In the classroom, you often need to differentiate your instruction for 3 populations at least: English language learners, children with special needs, and gifted learners. And when thinking of these 3 populations, you can ask yourself, will I need to adapt the curriculum goals, the classroom environment, or the learning materials in order to make sure that all students will be successful?
So the next piece of our lesson plan is the lesson plan assessment. When we think back to the beginning of the lesson plan we started, we set up our objective, right? We set up a clear and measurable way to ensure that our students had mastered the concepts we were teaching. And this is where your assessment comes into play. Your assessment gives you the information that you need to know to be able to say, yes, this kid mastered this objective for the lesson, or no, they did not. And so what's really important to keep in mind here, especially when we're talking about early childhood, is that when we say assessment in the assessment section of our lesson plan, we are not talking necessarily about a test or a quiz or a paper pencil task, right? We're talking about a way for the kids that we're working with to apply what they've learned. It can be done with guided practice, or it can be done with independent practice. It can be done by checking to make sure that the kids understand the skills through observations or asking them questions, or if it's appropriate, collecting work samples. So it's really important to keep in mind that our assessment should be directly connected back to our lesson objective, because our assessment is our way of checking to see whether or not students have mastered that objective. But it's important to make sure that how we do this is appropriate based on the age of the kids that we're working with. So for example, if we think about kids learning how to do head, shoulders, knees, and toes with the song, our assessment could be playing the song during the listening center, or in the listening center, having the kids practice the song during center time. And then as the kids are practicing, you're observing and taking anecdotal records about what they're doing. You could then use those anecdotal records to go back and check to see who has or has not mastered your objective that you already created. And finally, when we get to the end of our lesson, we don't want to just say, well, that was great, we're all done, and we wash our hands of what happened. It's important that we come back to have some type of closure. We want to use the closing to wrap up the lesson we've taught, to reinforce and review our lesson objective to make sure that our kids know what they've learned and for them to show us what they've learned. So we can think of it as a way to come back together, have everybody come back to a whole group. Ask them how the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes help them to learn about where their head, shoulders, knees, and toes are. To go reinforce it, practice the skill with the kids again. But we want to provide a way to bring a sense of closure and ending to that lesson before we would move on to the next.